I've got with me Mazda's biggest, most luxurious, and most expensive car they make. It's the Mazda CX-90, and it's also the most powerful production Mazda ever produced. Sorry, Rotary boys, this is more powerful than your RX-7. Now, this thing tops out at over $100,000, so it definitely isn't cheap, but it starts at around $73,000. So yes, you are looking at the most expensive Mazda that you can buy. You can think of this as Mazda's BMW X7. It's a 7-seater, it has a big inline-6 motor under the bonnet, and it's meant to be fun to drive. Now, this CX-90 I've got is dripping in artisan red metallic, which I think looks great. It's awesome for wine country because it matches red wine, but you can get a brighter red, which does stand out a little bit more than this. You get a black grille, plenty of chrome, LED lights, and also functional aero down here on the bumper, which I think all looks pretty good. Now, we get 21-inch wheels, which are dual tone, which helps sort of accent these chrome accents that you see around here, but you can't get fully blacked out wheels, which I thought would have looked kind of cool on this car. But you do get bragging rights. You get an inline-6 badge to let everyone know that you have a big inline-6 underneath the bonnet of this car here. Ooh, it's the most powerful production Mazda motor. You're looking at it. Under here is a 3.3 litre petrol turbocharged inline-6. It's paired up to a mild hybrid system, which means there's a small lithium-ion battery on board to help save with a bit of fuel economy. Now, under here, you are getting 254 kilowatts, which translates to 340 horsepower and 500 newton meters of torque. Now, if you want more torque, there is a diesel version of this motor, but to be honest, if you want the most power and to be honest, the bragging rights to have the most powerful production motor from Mazda, you have to get the petrol. Now, down here, we have more chrome with Mazda stamped on the side of it to proudly let everyone know this is a Mazda. Mazda haven't shied away from putting their name on this car. They haven't created a sub-brand. They're proud to say that this is what Mazda is doing now. Now, we do have rear LED lights, which I think look quite nice. They're very big as well. They go all the way along the back. It's something you'll see on a lot of Mazda's CX luxury SUVs. Now, we have some chrome badges down here, but we don't have any fake exhaust pipes like we saw on the CX-60, which I'm very happy about. Now, this rear design of the car does look quite good, but it does have a bit of like a rolled shoulder hunchback look around here, but that's all in the name of boot space. So back here, we have an automatic tailgate, which opens up to reveal over 250 liters of boot space with all 7 seats up. Now, back here, we do have a little bit of storage under the back, and we do also have an AC plug back here. So you do have a household plug as well as a 12-volt socket, which is very practical for a family car. Now, to fold down the third row, you just pull on this tab here, the headrest folds down, and you just push it forwards. Very simple. Now, that does reveal over 600 liters of boot space when you have the third row folded, and if you fold down the second row, you'll get over 2,000 liters of boot space. So yes, it is a very roomy SUV, so it does justify how big it is. So I've squeezed myself into the third row as a 5'11" adult. I don't have much feet room, but I do have a decent amount of headroom. I'm reclined a bit, so I'm more comfortable, and these seats are so soft that I feel actually I could sit back here for a little while. Now, I have a USB-C port back here and an air vent, so I'm not going to suffocate back here, and a decent sized window. So for children, it'll be good back here. They'll be just fine. But for adults, it will be a little squishy for people's legs, but for your headroom and also being comfortable back here, it's not so bad. So this configuration here in the second row is just 2 seats. This isn't a middle seat because this has a captain's chair configuration, which means you get a center storage cubby area and some extra space between you and the other passenger, and it's part of a thing called the Takumi package, which is a extra addition you can put on this top end CX-90. Now, here we do have our own ventilation here in the back with our own climate controls. We have rear ventilated seats and rear heated seats, which was something that Mitsuru-san, who is the program manager of the CX-90, said he was very proud of, to get ventilated seats in the second row. We do have a window shade back here, and part of that pack I mentioned earlier, we do get actual maple wood here in the back. I really like the bright work here with this trim on the door. I really like the fabric here as well. It feels very luxurious, but the white leather might be a bit of a problem for people who have messy kids or even just wearing blue jeans. You also have 2 USB-C ports here, but what's good is that as a 5'11" adult, I have plenty of headroom, decent amounts of knee room, plenty of feet room, so I'm going to be very comfortable for long trips. But if you don't want just this configuration, you don't have to tick this option, so it means you will get a third seat here in the middle in the second row. Now, this does feel like Mazda's most luxurious interior. You've got plenty of soft touch materials all throughout the dashboard, especially up on the top. You have a big screen here, which also is a touchscreen when you're stationary, but unfortunately it turns off from being a touchscreen. It means you have to interact with the dial down here for safety reasons, according to Mazda. Now, this fabric here on the dash is part of that pack I was talking about, and it does come with a hanging stitch design, which is very unique, and I'd almost just tick that option pack just to get this really cool dashboard. Now we get some more bright work around the top here, which also connects the air vents either side, which is a really cool bit of design. Now the HVAC controls here was also something that Mitsuru-san, who is the program manager who I mentioned earlier, said he was very proud of this layout here, which makes it easier for passengers and the driver to interact with, which I can see here is being very easy to use, and also the fact it's not hidden through a screen. Now we have a wireless phone charger, a 12-volt socket, and we have more that maple wood down here in the center console. Now we have a very cool shifter design. I really like these new Mazda shifters. They look quite nice, and also a thing that says My Drive or MI Drive, which is actually Mazda's drive modes. That's all it is. And now you have hill descent control, camera button, and like those media controls I was mentioning earlier. Now you do have a split center console, which is pretty useful, but it's very shallow. But you do have two USB-C ports in there, which makes it easy to, connect up or charge. But you can close this individually, which means you don't have to bother the other person to get anything out of the middle. Now you get a full color heads-up display in this car. You also get a giant digital instrument cluster, but unfortunately it's not very customizable. But what is cool is that if you go into sport mode, it does go very red and looks quite aggressive. Now the steering wheel is a nice size. I love the physical buttons. You do have paddle shifters on here, but they're nice and small and out of the way, so they're not interfering when you're driving day to day, which I really quite like, and very good attention to detail. Also got white stitching here as well, and you can electronically control this steering column to get nice and comfortable. What else is cool on this top spec CX-90 is that you do get this driver personalization setting, which means you put your height in centimeters into the settings here, and the car will adjust around you, mirrors, seat, and steering wheel, which is a really cool way to make sure you're comfortable straight away when you jump into a CX-90. Now Mazda claims that this car can go 0 to 106.9 seconds, so let's see what that feels like when you put Mazda's most powerful motor in a family car. Now this thing does hustle, and it does sound pretty good too, but there is a bit of a sound generator going on in the background to sort of enhance that sound, which brings me on to the point of the diesel. I did drive the diesel for a little bit, and I did find it to actually be very smooth. They use the same gear ratios, so it's kind of hard to notice if you don't know what engine you're stepping into. And it means you get a buttery smooth ride in a diesel motor, and something that if you're looking for a car that's a little less thirsty than the petrol and it offers a little bit more torque, you can go into that. But you do have to note that the diesel does not tow as much as the petrol. That's due to cooling and apparently due to demand. So apparently more people said that they wanted the petrol motor to tow more, according to Mazda, and so they've gone ahead and prioritized the petrol to tow 500 kilos more than the diesel. But you can get the diesel for extra torque and better fuel economy. Now the mild hybrid system in here works quite well. It's quite active. I've seen the revs drop down to 0 a few times, which some mild hybrid systems aren't so active like that, but here definitely can notice it working. And also the fuel economy for a 3.3 litre inline six in a big car like this is not bad at all. Now we're averaging around 10.4 litres as indicated by the car right now, but I've seen it go as low as 8 litres, which again is quite good, and you can tell that that lithium ion battery is working away to make sure that this car is sipping fuel. Now I'm in sport mode at the moment, but you can knock it back into normal mode, but what that doesn't do is change the ride. I did find the ride to be very nice. It's quite compliant, and also means that you do have a bit more confidence going through corners thanks to the fact that it has rear wheel drive bias. Now Mazda doesn't disclose the official figures for weight distribution, but they say in this petrol model it is pretty close to 50-50 weight distribution. Now here's the thing, it does feel like a comfortable plush ride, but then when you hit some bumpy parts of the road, when you're wearing these big 21-inch shoes, you do feel a little bit more of the road, which is kind of weird because it feels like a plush ride, and then all of a sudden it can feel a little bit jarring. So the ride does feel a little bit confused at times, and I do really think that adaptive shocks would work in a big SUV like this, like it does in other premium SUVs. But we don't have any adaptive shocks here, but ultimately the ride isn't like bad at all. It's quite nice, but it won't be as plush as, say, something like a Hyundai Palisade or a Genesis GV80. But it does mean when you go through corners, you can have a bit more fun. Now, this thing does like to settle down and just hook into a corner, which is a lot of fun for a big 7-seat SUV. And that's something that's weird to say, that a 7-seat SUV like this is fun to drive. And that is the whole purpose of this thing, having a more powerful motor and having the design it has and the driving characteristics it does come with, because it is designed to be a bit more fun to drive and reinvigorate your love for driving, as Mazda says. And to be honest, I can sort of sense that this is definitely more thrilling than, say, a Mazda CX-9. So I gotta say, this inline six here, Ooh, it's buttery, it's delicious. This thing is far more enticing than a 4-cylinder alternative. So I'm very pleased to see that Mazda is launching with the 2 straight-six options in 2023 when a lot of manufacturers aren't going this way. So that is pretty exciting. And yes, this inline-six does behave as you would expect, and it's a very, very good motor. Now, this car does come with plenty of safety systems, and look, they work very well. Radar cruise is awesome, but I did find on some country roads where the edge of the road wasn't so defined, it was a little bit overreactive, which was just a little bit annoying and would probably lead me to turn off a few systems when I'm driving on a country road. But to be honest, this car does a very good job of just making sure you're staying on the road. Now, turning circle on a big behemoth like this isn't so bad. And what else is cool is that this thing gets cornering technology that you'll see on a Mazda MX-5. Now, that means that the body stays nice and upright through corners, using a bit of brakes that nibble on the inside wheel to make sure you don't get too much lift, which is really cool. So if you do daily drive an MX-5 and you're looking at getting a CX-90, for example, you will get some similar cornering characteristics, even though this thing is a completely different vehicle in terms of size, mass, and power. So braking this thing is actually really quite nice. So when you go to put on the brakes, the car sort of drifts downward. This was something that was explained to me on the CX-60 launch. So instead of pitching forwards and backwards, this car is designed to sort of lift up and down. And I really do feel that. It takes a lot to make sure that you can get this thing to pitch forwards and backwards, and you really have to be stabbing the brake pedal. But if you're just sort of gliding onto the brake pedal as you would day-to-day driving, it really does stay nice and flat. And it means that the interior isn't going to feel too upset, and hopefully it means a little less incidents of people being car sick. Now, Mazda have said that this is going to be the aspirational car. So if you started life in a small Mazda SUV or even a Mazda 2, you're going to be aspiring to jump into one of these. They want affluent customers, and they want people who actually, might be jumping into a luxury car to consider Mazda as a proper luxury alternative. So I'm very curious to see if buyers from, say, Lexus or Genesis or even BMW might consider this as their next car, because I really think that Mazda have delivered on the promise of making a proper luxury SUV that's also powerful, and yes, surprisingly, it is fun to drive. Now, that was a first drive and first look at the CX-90, which is super exciting, and if you want to see more reviews just like this, or launch reviews, or even first looks like this, you have to hit that subscribe button, because it lets me know that you want to see more videos like this on this channel. Now, if you want to see more behind the scenes content, extra content, you have to follow us on TikTok and Instagram to be able to see that, and go to @ProductReviewCars and follow us there. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you in the next one.